Imagine supermarkets are deserted, your phone is silent, the power has been out for days, and no one is coming to help. While you watch this video, there are people confident they are ready for catastrophe. But in a real collapse, they won't last 2 weeks. Not due to a lack of food or water, but because they will make 3 fatal mistakes in the first 90 days without even realizing it. In the following minutes, I will explain why the most dangerous period is not the catastrophe itself, but what happens afterward when neighbors stop asking for help and begin to see you as a target. I will describe the specific actions to take in the first 24 hours, the first week, and the first 3 months to avoid becoming just a statistic. If you want to understand why most people prepare for the wrong disaster and how you can make the difference between survival and losing everything, stay with us, as what follows may radically change your perception of your family's safety. This video represents a hypothetical scenario for educational and entertainment purposes. It does not promote violence or dangerous actions. Always follow the laws and authorities' instructions. Number 8. The first 90 days determine your fate. Many believe the most dangerous moment in a collapse is the catastrophe itself, but in reality, it is quite different. True hell begins later. In the first 30 to 60 days, as information disappears, despair grows, and social order collapses. It is at this moment that the most lives are lost. People who have food, water, and shelter find themselves in a critical situation simply because they did not understand one important rule. Survival depends not on what you have, but on the decisions you make from the very first minute. And it is here that most people fail. They leave their homes in search of explanations, following the natural desire to know what is happening. But this early movement significantly increases the risk of infection, violence, or falling into chaos. While true survivors do what seems counterintuitive, they become invisible, act calmly, assess the situation from within, analyze which services are operational, which neighbors have panicked, and what signals indicate whether the disaster is local or nationwide. Because here is the harsh truth. Whoever controls the first 24 hours governs the following 90 days. Those who act without information simply won't survive to the second week. Therefore, understanding this early phase is not an option. This is the line that separates those who survive from those who become part of the problem. If you value your family's safety and want to be prepared, stay with us. Number 7. The lack of information is your main enemy. When connections break down and your phone, internet, and even radio stop working, you enter a dangerous zone that only a few can handle. A void of information. This period, covering the first 72 hours, becomes a silent killer as it paralyzes people or pushes them to impulsive actions. Human instinct suggests, go out and find out what is happening. But this very urge puts thousands in a difficult position. In conditions where no one knows anything, fear mingles with rumors, confusion reigns, and dangers, from diseases to robberies, are not yet visible but are beginning to take shape. Going out in such a situation is like stepping onto a minefield in the dark. True survivors understand that in an information vacuum, the main task is not to uncover the reasons for the disaster, but to protect themselves. Stay hidden. Assess the situation from concealed places, and try not to draw unnecessary attention. This is where the gray man protocol comes into play. To become invisible, silent, hard to identify, and even harder to pursue. While others take risks out of curiosity or despair, you are already gathering important signals from home, which services have stopped working, how neighbors are reacting, and whether the problem is local or global. In a world devoid of information, every detail is a clue, and those who can read them will make the right decisions before chaos reaches its peak. The 6th rule is the protocol of the first 6 hours, the difference between control and chaos. The first 6 hours after the real collapse are a quiet test that almost no one suspects. Here, the survivors are not the strongest, but the smartest. During this critical period, it is necessary to activate the so-called immediate assessment protocol, a set of actions that allows understanding the scale of the disaster before the situation becomes violent or unpredictable. This is not a time for panic or improvisation. It is a time for analysis. Are landline phones working? Has the water supply changed? Is gas still coming? Has the internet lost signal? Each of these clues indicates whether you are facing a local outage, a massive cyber attack, or an event affecting the entire country's infrastructure. Those who read these signals early gain a huge advantage over those who wait to see what happens next. But that's not all. While many go out into the streets in search of answers, the true survivor conducts their assessment from home, watching from the windows, listening to the sounds outside, analyzing the behavior of neighbors, avoiding risk. People appear confused. Is there unusual movement? Has someone already panicked? This early information helps to understand how quickly the situation in your area is deteriorating and how urgently security needs to be reinforced or a containment plan initiated. The first 6 hours are like a prologue to disaster. If you read it carefully, you know exactly what will happen next. If you ignore it, you risk getting lost in events, and this is where mistakes that can cost lives begin. Stay until the end, because the last 20 seconds will change your perception of this topic. Point number 5. From the 6th to the 24th hour. Inventory, safety, and the truth that no one wants to accept. After the first hours, you enter a phase where most make fatal mistakes, the transition from assessment to action. From the 6th to the 24th hour, your task is clear. It is essential to know exactly what you have, how long it will last, and how to protect it. Here, critical inventory becomes your best weapon. It's not just about counting cans and bottles. It is important to calculate how many days you can survive with your current supplies and how quickly you need to switch to rationing. Water, for example, is always the fastest depleting resource and determines many lives. 1 gallon per person per day is the minimum standard. If you don't know how many days your supplies will last, you're already at a disadvantage. The same goes for food. You can't just have products. You need to know which require water, which need heat, and which can be eaten without cooking. But here's the part no one wants to hear. This is also the moment to activate the first level of security. Not to fight, but to avoid the need for it. Motion sensors, homemade alert systems, reinforced doors, locked windows, and noticeable but non-provocative warning signs. The key here is to seem an unattractive target, not revealing your readiness. From the outside, your house should look like any neighbor's. Inside, it must function like a quiet fortress. This initial stage of security not only protects your resources, but also your anonymous existence. In the conditions of collapse, the most valuable thing is not what you have, but that no one knows you have it. Write in the comments if you also feel that no one talks about these things. Point number 4. The second and third days mark the beginning of quiet chaos. By the time the second and third day arrive, the true face of the collapse begins to manifest, but very quietly. There are no mass robberies yet, no open brutality, but a social map is already forming that will determine who will become a threat, who will become an ally, and who will turn into a danger in the coming days. This is the time when you begin to identify patterns. Neighbors who continue to behave as if everything will return to normal, those who have already fallen into panic and are consuming their supplies at a mad pace, and the few, like you, who act calmly, analyzing and preparing. Documenting these behaviors is crucial as it reveals who will be the first to lose control. Those who deny reality will be the ones knocking at your door for help. Those who panic will become dangerous first. This is also the perfect time to establish strategic connections with a very limited number of reliable neighbors. It's not about forming a large group or revealing one's resources. It's about creating simple signals, basic agreements, and minimal information exchange. This could be the fabric at the window, a specific time to survey the surroundings, or an inconspicuous meeting point. These routines not only help maintain mental control in chaotic conditions, but also allow one to anticipate threats before they reach your doorstep. In the first 2 or 3 days, you survive not by fighting, but by observing, understanding, and being able to identify who will be your problem and who can help when the collapse stops being quiet and turns into a struggle for resources. Stay until the end, because these 3 moments are the most important. Point number 3, the days from the 4th to the 7th. This is the first wave of uncertainty. Between the 4th and 7th days, the collapse stops being perceived as a temporary malfunction and begins to turn into a situation where people, in search of answers and solutions, experience a mix of anxiety and fatigue. This period is known as the first wave of uncertainty, when people finally realize that the situation will drag on and they will have to restructure their routines. In these days, many start to go out in small groups to check shops, businesses, and public places in hopes of finding information, useful resources, or at least signs that everything will soon return to normal. Although the atmosphere is still relatively calm, one cannot help but notice the tension caused by the lack of clear news and the feeling that they are experiencing something unusual. For you, this stage is not an invitation to explore or unreasonable risks, but an opportunity to practice what I call strategic invisibility, managing your presence discreetly, projecting calmness, and avoiding others thinking you have more or less than necessary. Small details, such as maintaining the usual appearance of your home, avoiding unnecessary noise, and steering clear of noticeable movements, will help you not become the object of interest. However, it's important to remember that invisibility does not mean disconnecting from reality. In these days, it is extremely important to carefully observe who remains calm, who seeks cooperation, and who needs help. The information you gather now will be key to anticipating future situations and staying 2 steps ahead, avoiding conflicts and not attracting attention. At this stage, the priority is not to collide with uncertainty, but to skillfully and balancedly navigate around it. Point number 2. The days from the 8th to the 12th. The systematic search begins. Starting from the 8th day, despair begins to take more organized forms, and some people start to explore the surroundings in search of support, information, or opportunities to exchange resources, which can create a tense atmosphere full of uncertainty. At this stage, many make the mistake of acting impulsively or in isolation. It is important to remain calm, cautious, and ready to cooperate, showing that you are responsibly managing your resources and, like everyone else, trying to adapt to the situation without panicking. Observe the behavior of those around you to understand who needs help, who actively collaborates, and who requires guidance, always striving to promote peaceful coexistence and avoid misunderstandings. At this moment, the key is not to hide problems or confront, but to manage perception with calmness, empathy, and balance, as how others see you will directly affect the type of interactions in the following days. Before continuing, share this video with relatives and in messenger groups. The first 90 days, starting from the 13th, is a period when true resilience begins to form. From the 13th day, the situation starts to be perceived not as a temporary difficulty, but as a process of adaptation. Here, people realize that the key is not just the ability to survive, but the necessity to reorganize their lives with the available resources. From the 13th to the 30th day, people begin to find new places, seek mutual support, and form small groups to exchange information, tools, and skills. This is a time when cooperation becomes more valuable than any supplies. From the 30th to the 60th day, many begin to create new habits, organize spaces for growing plants, establish simple water purification systems, methods for storing food, and, importantly, form support networks based on trust and cooperation. This is also a stage when each person realizes that they can contribute to their community. Some engage in repairs, some teach, and some produce, and all of this adds up to a common result. Finally, from the 60th to the 90th day, the most important transition occurs, from dependence on reserves to the use of renewable and sustainable systems. People developing practical skills such as cooking with minimal resources, growing food, creating tools, managing water resources, and teaching others are capable of stabilizing their environment and creating a new normal. These 90 days are not about fear, but about adaptation, creativity, and collective learning. It is a reminder that even in the most challenging times, skills and collaboration create true resilience. This material is purely educational and describes hypothetical scenarios. He does not encourage violence or dangerous behavior. Always adhere to local laws and the guidance of the relevant authorities.